Welcome to Studio 58A, our discussion program coming to you live on Facebook right here at the Jamaica Information Service. Now, typically we do our program on a Thursday, and as you can see, we're up and running on a Friday. The reason for that is that we have a special guest in-house who we are gladly able to rearrange our schedule to accommodate. Our guest today is Commissioner of Police Major General Antony Anderson, and he's here to discuss the newly established branch of the Jamaica Constabulary Force, the Public Safety and Traffic Enforcement Branch. Welcome, Commissioner. Nice to have you.
Hi, thank you very much.
I encourage those of you out there with questions for the Commissioner to take advantage of this opportunity to interact with him. And like I said before, make this a lively discussion. This is your program, ladies and gentlemen. We bring the persons in-house so you can see them, talk to them, get answers from them, and, you know, hopefully build a rapport. And that way we can address issues in a more fulsome and transparent manner. Now, Commissioner, to begin with, what was the rationale for the introduction of this new branch, the Public Safety and Traffic Enforcement Branch?
Okay, well, one of the things that, you know, coming to the job that was obviously a concern of the public was what's happening on the roads. That was a big concern, what's happening in public spaces, transport centers with public transportation, and just trying to get about your business. And it seemed clear, it was clear to me that the police were not visible enough.
Okay.
You know, I've traveled around to other places. I look in Colombia, and I look across Bogota, where it is really congested with traffic, worse than us.
Okay.
And it's really, the police are very visible. They have a similar color to what we are, we're using now. Also, when we have the worst times, which is usually at end of month Friday, with it raining.
Right, definitely.
Where that's the most challenging time around Kingston. We found that our officers, even though, you know, we get notified that something's happening somewhere, we can't get them there fast enough.
Right.
So we needed to give them mobility in our context, which was obviously a highly bike-based, motorbike-based program. Also, we had to, when you look at it, in some of the spaces like our commercial areas, bicycles perhaps work better.
Right.
Other places, guys walking.
Right.
And so on. So it's really how we take what used to be a motorized patrol and traffic branch, and then some other pieces, put it together and form a new branch that can deal with all of those issues and can really focus on it. So it's new. We need to get the rest of our force, the uniformed part of our force, very visible. It gives people confidence. It builds confidence. It means that people can access the police easily when something's happening, and now you can see them way up the road. So hopefully we adjust behavior before we have to do enforcement.
Preventative kind of policing, that kind of thing. Now, give me an idea of get more specific with me for the specific roles and functions. Are their duties more specified now with this new branch?
Well, so they used to do, there are a number of the activities that were done before. It's just that we're bringing them together and focusing them, and also it means that we have more persons to do each function. So what we can do is, obviously, the traffic band isn't uniform. It has high points, lower points, and perhaps no points, like in the middle of the night. But but on our motorized patrol people, they go 24 hours a day. You know, there's always need. So we can flow better in terms of how many we need doing one thing at a particular time, and then we can divert them to do other things and so on.
So essentially, like more dynamic, you can respond to issues.
More dynamic, and also, you know, we've had there's a lot of videos going around with officers with difficult arrests. At this point, we'll be able to go from 2 to 10 to 15 officers in a very short space of time. So those arrests become much less difficult.
Right, you can bring situations under control much easier.
Much easier. Yeah,
okay, and I mean, they are very visible. I mean, I don't think you should miss the bright neon yellow uniforms that they have on the bikes. Now, how will they be rolled out? What's the strategy behind that?
Well, I mean, remember, we already had a strategy since earlier this year for how we man some key intersections and so on, and try and keep things flowing. And at that time, things weren't as bad as they are now. If you look along the roadway, particularly our most busy roads, they're all under construction.
Exactly.
Constant Spring Road Hagley Park Road, 3 miles, that intersection takes tens of thousands of cars a day that we have to divert. And we're diverting them through areas where the people don't normally drive through. And now we're taking, you know, lots of people through the areas. It means that we're going to need a lot of presence on the route. We're working with other partners to get better signage. So that when you have a diversion, it's not just one sign that sends you somewhere.
Easy to get people through, because the construction is one of the biggest concerns, because you can just imagine, especially
and the number of lights that are out,
right?
And the lights are out because they cut the fiber gets busted in the construction and all of that. So we recognize that we have to get ahead of it. We have to be very visible, present, and dynamic in how we do it, because, you know, if there's a snarl somewhere, we have to move there quickly. We have a few, we have some traffic cams through NWA, Jamaica Eye, and all of that, so we have some visibility. Not everywhere yet, but it'll get better.
All right, so just quickly, where will they be headquartered?
They're headquartered at Elliston Road.
Elliston Road.
Where traffic division was and motorized patrol division was.
All right. And just to be clear, I understand that the unit was formed from the merger of 3 or 4 separate branches.
Well, it's really divisions, motorized patrol and traffic and highway. That's the 2 large parts. And then we've also included the tourism police or district constable corps as part of that.
And I understand that in the initial rolling out, they're going to be focused on specific areas, corporate area and resort towns. Is that correct, or is there more?
They are doing corporate area. We'll be going to Spanish Town, then we'll be going to Montego Bay, the big, and then from there we'll look at town centres, how we do other town centres, and bring them on board. The resort part is, it's existing. It's really just where is the best place to locate them in the overall scheme of things, and it was thought that this branch may be a good place to actually house them.
And I understand that a key focus of the branch will be to build up public trust and establish that rapport. Just elaborate. You touched on it briefly a while ago, but especially in difficult arrests and things like that. But you said a key focus is to they're visible and there, so persons can establish that more comfortable rapport with the police. So elaborate on that for me.
Well, it's not, so remember, if you're doing the right things, the police should be your best friends.
Yeah. Well,
we have to get there. But
that's where we need to get.
In other countries, in some places, it's not uniform at all, because some of the same challenges we have there have them elsewhere. But you really want your police officer to be anybody, a member of the public who has a problem and sees a police officer should feel comfortable to approach them and say, I have a problem, and should get helped somehow. Even if it's not within their role, they should be able to point them to where you can get it, or try to help. That needs to be the dynamic generally. At the same time, persons who are doing the wrong things, who are breaking the law, who are creating the traffic problems and so on, there needs to be strict enforcement. It needs to happen all the time, uniformly. You should not be breaking the law in front of a police officer and nothing happens. It must happen each time. And the public are always very disappointed in us when when they see a police officer they say, yes, okay, that guy who's breaking the law, police officer is there.
That's exactly what I was about to ask you, because more than one occasion you just look around and say, where are the police? I mean, if a police officer was here right now, that better just overtake about 20 cars or something like
that.
So
that's the first question. But when a police officer is there and he does nothing about it, it's even worse.
Yeah, exactly. Well, definitely.
And so we've been impressing on the members, because there are a lot of new guys in this branch, that they are consistent with their enforcement.
Yes,
they
exactly.
need to be consistent with it. And when you get consistent with it, and they know that every time there's an infraction they're going to enforce, behavior will change.
All right, and you find that you've imposed this upon the officer, that they are supposed to be very, very deliberate in their enforcement efforts to make sure
absolutely.
that we don't feel like it's on the first couple of weeks we have that real stringent enforcement, and then as the weeks go by, you find that things kind of taper off and go on.
They need to be. If somebody is breaking the law, the rules in front of a police officer, something must happen. Must.
And that's that.
That needs to happen. That's certainly where we're aiming for.
All right, I understand that members have also been exposed to, human rights training, ways in which that they can interact with the public, which are less hostile, for lack of a better word, so that the interaction itself is also improved.
Well, one of the things we have to build in our offices is confidence. Because quite often, if you're not sure and you're not confident, you become more aggressive. Because you're not sure, and so you don't want to appear to be weak.
Right.
So
of
you
course.
get overly
you try to match that.
Yes, to match it, to try and save face or whatever. So that's why training is so important, and that's why, so that the more the officer knows, the more comfortable they get doing their job, is the more confident they are, and the less they have to unnecessarily exert themselves, become aggressive and so on. So we have a mix of young and experienced, and we're kind of trying to put them together to get the best mix.
Now, I guess persons, I know myself particularly, what would be the ideal arrest scenario, so to speak? I mean, because, you find that we've seen the example of what seems a little too extreme. But what would you suggest is the appropriate or the ideal scenario?
Well, remember, Well, you see some that are extreme and some that are, it's just that, the thing about clips is that, and I tell my officers that first thing is that if you always have more cameras in a room than people nowadays.
Yeah, definitely.
So, at least one person in the room has at least 2 phones.
Right.
And all of them have a camera. So you're going to be filmed. The thing is that people tend to film what you did, not why you did it.
Yes, that's true.
And so even when it's the clip has caught the whole thing, the clip apart.
Yeah.
That is the part that
that's
you want to.
That's the most sensational part, so to speak.
Which is what you did. A police officer has no. If they're doing an arrest, there's a process, and they're taught how to do it, and they're told to tell the person why they're being arrested. It's the duty of the public to comply with that. It's a requirement.
Because
now, if you feel that you were improperly arrested, then there are mechanisms to deal with that, to complain, to sue, to do. But at the time of the arrest, it's your duty to comply with that.
Okay. Because I'm sure many persons think that they have the option to
right.
Well, and I wouldn't say resist, but to verbalize opposition, so to speak.
They start with verbalizing it, and then it becomes more than that, and so on, until it becomes this sort of fight or whatever it is, and then the officer is dragging them and so on and so forth. It's not really. The officer isn't to walk away from a problem just because it's getting difficult.
Right.
So what we want to do is be able to reinforce those officers, because usually when you have that kind of differential of officers to persons being arrested, they actually just come along. Because there's no point where you're going to do the fight with 20 officers. Right. You just comply.
And so responses, quick responses are definite, essential part of this new branch's
quick
focus.
Response to deal with these issues so that we don't have unnecessary escalation. One of the things we're doing is creating some messaging that will be going out over the next weeks and months, so that the public knows and our officers know, and we're on the same sheet of music, that this is how things work. This is how a road stop works. This is how an arrest works. This is just to make the public familiar.
Right.
Once they know what's supposed to happen, they can judge for themselves whether this is
whether the police was excessive or whether
things
are just in order.
What is supposed to happen. Now, of course, if you can imagine, to actually create a branch takes quite a bit of effort.
Yeah, definitely.
Because there are lots of moving parts to get in the kit, to spray the bikes, to do all of the things to create the look. But we have a timeline to hit. So came out yesterday. We launched the day before. Clearly, where our target is for Monday.
Definitely, back to school.
For us, that was a fixed point.
Right.
We couldn't delay beyond there. So although we're not at final or full operating capability. We'll be out there with our initial operating capability. There are some things that will be added over time. Hopefully we'll, and what we're targeting is full operating capability by December, going into the Christmas season.
All right. We're in studio, ladies and gentlemen, with Commissioner of Police Major General Antony Anderson. He's here discussing the newly established Public Safety and Traffic Enforcement Branch. Like we always tell you to take advantage of the opportunity. He's right here. Any questions or concerns you may have, just send them to us. We can ask, we can put them to him, and he can answer. And we can engage with him and get his feedback, you know. I mean, I can see persons online. Let's say thank you to Navlet Sue, who's watching, and she says thank you for wearing a suit. She doesn't particularly like the brown khaki suits that you have. But thank you for your comment, Navlet. Appreciate that. Alicia Mitchell, good day. Thank you. Appreciate you for watching. Will Balfour, Jermaine Jones. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Now, Commissioner, as we continue, in terms of, you mentioned full capacity. What does that look like in terms of full capacity rollout for the unit?
No, so it won't look a lot different than it is now in terms of actual look, but we know that there are other parts that we need to put in place. By then it will give us more capability in terms of our communications, in terms of things like body cameras and so on. All that will be as a standard feature of the branch and elsewhere. Just that they have everything required to do their job on them all the time. So, it's something we're working on in a broader sense for the force. My particular emphasis is to the patrol officer at the front, at the front of the force. The guy who interfaces with the girl who interfaces with the public is my emphasis. We have to focus our budget there, and our whatever we do has to support them doing their work.
Right. So it seems to me like that's the real focal point for the force right now, rehabilitating that image of that frontline officer as he engages with members of the public, and so begin that process of shaping the whole image and look and perception of the force.
So right, because whatever I say, the public will judge what I say against what they experience.
Right.
So it really no point me saying if something is not happening for the experience. The experience will always be either that officer on the beat, the officer who does a stop on the road, or when you walk into the police station, the first person you meet. That's really
of course.
Those are our ambassadors.
Right.
That's it. So if we don't invest in them, if we don't get them to appreciate how important their position is, then we'll keep ending up with poor results.
I don't know if you addressed it specifically before, but what are there specific offenses, so to speak, that they are tasked to investigate or bring under control?
Generally.
Just general, they're still officers.
They're officers. They're constables. That's it. It's not. So they're general. They'll be doing general policing. They will have an emphasis on traffic enforcement. So obviously they have to be very familiar with that act, and obviously we have to put things in place so that they can transition to the new act when it's signed, which is obviously not far away from now. But it's really the practice of doing things a particular way, being visible, being in charge of what's going on and owning it.
Having a comment here from Christopher King. Thank you, Christopher. It says, Commissioner, keep doing the work. I have hope that very soon we will start seeing more results. A shout out to all the police officers. The bike them pretty. People are excited about this thing. So you already have some people on their side. So I mean,
well, I mean, the point is I'm glad, and I'm also on their side. So I'm on the public side, and on our officers' side. They're not, it's interesting. We're not doing different things. We don't have different aims. We probably have different routes.
All right. Another question here. Say in 1 year time frame, what success are you and the force expected to gain from this new venture with introduction of this new branch?
Well, I mean,
from Carice White Phillips. Thank you, Carice. Appreciate it.
Right. Well, I mean, Carice, so what we should have is better management of our traffic circumstance, of our public spaces, how we treat our town centers. And it starts with little things, littering and, just
that's definitely something
things.
that's people always from the ground up.
So we expect to see these things improve. We expect that the dynamic is going to change, where there's almost this expectation from the public that I'll see a police officer, when I'm moving around, and that they're very visible, that becomes the norm. Right. And hopefully as well that deters some of the persons who have bad intentions from doing what they're doing. When you have order, you have less likely, it leaves less room for a lot of bad things.
Well, another question here from Duncan Buchanan. I'm going to ask it. I'll just put it here and you answer. Can the frontline officers be equipped with bulletproof vests, Commissioner?
Yes.
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 Simple. Okay.
And we have a number of we're bringing in more. That's why I say there's a difference between, your operational capabilities. We have an initial. All of that will happen. A lot of our frontline officers do actually have vests.
All right.
And so on. Sometimes it's under their
uniform or their shirt.
Under the high vis, so you won't necessarily see it and so on. But
it's there.
As you layer it. Not all of our officers have yet, but they all will.
All right.
We're moving towards that.
All right. Thank you, Duncan, for that question. Now, Commissioner, recently the police announced, just shifting tack a little bit, recently the police announced a double-digit percentage reduction in major crimes, including 16.8% decrease in murders, 15.4% decline in shootings, 9.4% fall in robberies, and so on. What do you attribute for this reduction? Well, of course, without getting into too much detail about strategies and so on, but what do you attribute?
No, but I'm saying they're very specific strategies that are working. How we blend our operations with our investigations, how we gather intelligence, how we layer what our community safety branch does on that with their interventions, and how the same people who are doing the operations intervene as well in the community to create better bonds, and also how some of our information work. So it's a combination of things that are leading to it. I mean, today it's 19%. So we're tracking. The truth is, though, it's way too high anyway.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean,
a reduction is a reduction, and we're glad
no,
for
and
it.
it's a big reduction in any sense of scale or whatever. That kind of reduction, especially that kind of reduction of a very big number, is significant. But at no point can we feel comfortable, and you even slightly ease up, because you still, even within that context of getting it down, you have bad days. Right. And then you try and recover through some good days and so on, and keep it going, keep people focused, and give them the tools to be able to further do the work to bring it down. I mean, unfortunately, we have a lot of guns. Yeah, definitely. And they're very available. And then what we've been seeing as well is not just, there's so many interpersonal disputes between families, between neighbors that end up in murder. It's just amazing. Right,
just the overall
stabs and chop up
easy resort to violence.
Well, it's easy resort to murder. So it's not even a fight. If somebody punches somebody, it's going straight all the way to murder, which means clearly that we have some work to do as a society around violence. It's really, really high. So.
Well, I have another question from Quentin Neko Nelson. Appreciate the question, Quentin. Now, it seems a little oppositional. He says, what measures will be put in place for these officers to get their own cars? They said taxi drivers getting tickets will be the ones transporting officers to work and home.
But remember, so a lot of officers do drive, some don't. So remember, there's really no problem with taxi drivers. There's a problem with taxi drivers breaking the law.
Right. Though we have a problem with the taximen, just the
why would
ones breaking the law.
Taximan or a busman when they are the ones carrying the majority of our or passengers is when they think that no rule or law applies to them, or where we have we're constantly ticketing the same persons and so on. So it's I don't know that there is a battle with the taxis.
Right.
They just need to follow the rules,
Right.
because we're going to be enforcing on them uniformly.
All right.
Yeah.
Now, let me ask you another one. The brazen indiscipline of route taxi and coaster drivers, is that a focal point of the new unit? Can drivers expect better use of the roads in places like Halfway Tree and downtown Kingston from the presence of these officers?
Well, I mean, obviously, if they're the group that's creating most of the problem, then they'll be focused on.
Right.
That's what I'm saying. That's what we just need to be uniform about this. If you are breaking the rules or the law in front of a police officer, it will and needs to be always they intervene.
All right. So, Commissioner, let me ask you, well, turning back to measures that are being used to bring things down, well, I wanted to ask you personally, what's your overarching vision, or what is the finished article, so to speak? What are you expecting to see when you have to satisfy yourself that you have made your mark on bringing our crime situation under control? What is that message that you want? What is the place that you want Jamaica to arrive at when you get into office and so on, in terms of your long-term vision and expectations?
No, I mean, remember, so in my mind, the country's fortunes are wrapped up a lot in its security.
Mm-hmm.
And the security of the country, to a great extent, is wrapped up in what the police force does,
mm-hmm.
and how we function, and what causes people to feel safe. That's why this is a public safety branch, not a public order branch.
Mm-hmm.
Because it goes,
very deliberate
so order
in the
is,
phrasing.
very deliberate, and order is part of it, but it's not everything. And and when you're looking at public safety, you can do the same things, but you're coming from a different place, different direction to get it. So clearly we need to get to the point with things like murders and shootings and so on, the point where whatever input you do, you still get a decline. Now that's what you call your tipping point.
Mm-hmm.
I have a sense of around where that way. I'm not going to mention it now, but because it's one of those things that can be debated about exactly where that point is. One scientist says one thing, one sociologist says another, and so on and so forth. So, but we need to get it that people feel safe.
So the reason I ask is because it's very important that persons are, because a lot of the times when we are introduced to new members of the security forces, a hierarchy and so on, it's very important that the focus or the drive is articulated to members of the public so that they can appreciate and, I suppose, get on board and lend their own support.
Well, one of the things, and so maybe it's my own style, I prefer to talk about what I'm doing or what I've done, rather than say, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. We're in a process. I mean, clearly, to do all of this in a short space of time takes a lot of focus and a lot of hard work by a number of officers in the force, and strong support from them for me and what I'm trying to achieve. So it really doesn't leave a lot of time to do other things. I mean, like my day starts at like 4 o'clock in the morning and generally goes until whenever, right? So it's not. That's because that's what's required at the moment. Hopefully, we can get to the stage where I can have a little shorter day.
All right. Well, Commissioner, people are taking advantage of the opportunity to ask you questions because they're coming in pretty quickly, and I just field them to you, and you can just take them as necessary. All right. What is being done to boost the moral support of police officers, especially in improving the work conditions of officers? From O'Dane, George, Commodore Thompson.
So, as you say, one of the things that was very apparent to me coming over was the business of officer welfare, conditions, etc. Now, basically, we're going to fix our police stations. I'm looking, and I've had these discussions with the minister where he's on board with me. We're looking at 2 years. 2 years, we fix all of them.
Okay.
Because when you think about it, there's no reason why we can't. There is no reason why we can't fix them, except that we have chosen to allocate money one place or another.
Right.
So I'm saying that if security is at the center of things like growth and so on, that's what boosts, that's what creates the foundation, the conditions for all the other things to work, then we've got to invest in it. We must invest. And so it's an investment, it's not even an expense. We have to invest in our officers, we have to invest in our police stations, we have to invest in our mobility, our communications, etc., and our intelligence. And then we can give better outcomes.
All right. Another question, which seems more to be asking along the lines of what guarantee that we have that the persons, especially the young constables coming in, will not necessarily be influenced by the negative, the bad behavior of persons before them. You know what I mean? So make sure that they have that kind of.
It's the question is always when you get a question about what guarantee.
Yeah, it's kind of hard, but I mean, it's kind of hard to ask the guarantee. But
right,
yeah.
But here's what you do. I mean, one is that the persons who have been coming into the force recently are fully vetted when they come in. So we know where their start point is. So they're polygraphed.
Yes.
Even before. At first, a lot of people failed.
Okay.
Much less fail now.
Okay.
Because they don't bother come.
Yeah, all
right.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
So, good. So we know at least at the beginning that we have them, that they're okay. Now, even in doing this branch, we put quite a lot of them together. And sometimes, and most people know what's right. And sometimes they're influenced over time. Some officers have gotten under the influence of other people who are telling them the wrong things, but usually they're by themselves. And so they don't know where to go or what to do. Well, these officers are together, and so there are a lot of them. They know what the right things are. Once you're a police officer, you're a sworn officer, you have all the responsibilities under law as any other officer.
All right. All right, one more question, then I suppose we're going to move into it. We don't want things to get too long and drawn out with the commissioner, so I'll just ask him this question here. What's with Rohan Buchanan is asking, what's with this thing about police stations closing at 8 and 9 p.m.?
Right. So it's not that the police station, so a door, okay, so you may close the door of a police station, depending on where it is. And I know the history of it comes that police stations have been shut up in the past. Usually, especially if officers, you have a small detail at a police station, because we do not have enough officers to man them fully. They get a call, half of that is gone, leaving 2 or 3 officers in the station. So they may close the door, but they need to be accessible. In other words, if somebody knocks, they open it. Now, I know that is happening. It's something we are looking at and, assessing how we balance access to the public with officer safety. I mean, the truth is that most people, unless you live in certain places or go there, don't really understand the dynamic.
Right. They might just see the station looking closed and then just wonder and kiss their teeth, wondering what's going on, when it's probably more detailed.
That the number of persons with weapons around. Now, the police are not normally the target. It's usually other guys, saying, but you're in the middle and you have a responsibility, etc. So it's something. It always gives a bad impression because it means you're not accessible, especially for persons who are outside of those areas where you have this high level of violence.
Right.
And probably under-equipped, understaffed police stations.
All right. Now, we're going to move into wrap, so I'm going to just give you the final word to just, again, talk to members of the public about the mandate and the roles and functions of the new Public Safety and Traffic Enforcement branch, what they can expect, and how it will be rolled out and so on, and then we can move to the closing from there. So it's over to you. Can just look into the camera and just let people know.
We are giving the public a more visible police force. We're trying to deal with some of the issues that have been a concern for a while around public order, lawlessness on our roads, etc. but I couldn't really speak to the public without appealing that we really got to be better at how we deal with our personal conflicts, how we deal with violence, how we start that cycle of violence with our kids, and then it gets worse and worse. And also how we treat our women and children, and how vulnerable we make our young women because of our own reasons. And then when the problem is, when it's happened and it's at its worst, then it's the police. But it's not. It happens long before it ever becomes a police action. We have too much crime. We have too much violence. And we will do our part. We will intervene. We'll get better at it. But we still need to cut off the source of it and to reduce the input to violence. So the fact is, so in one sense, we'll be giving more. And in one sense, we'll be asking for more from the public in terms of just dealing with matters or giving or assisting us and giving us information. So we'll be out there, and it's another step in the direction we're going. The truth is the Jamaica Constabulary Force needs to be a force for good, and that's where we're heading.
All right, wonderful. All right, so it's time for us to wrap. Thank you to everyone who tuned into our discussion, especially those of you who sent in questions and comments. We really do appreciate them. Thank you very much. And if you sent in a question and we didn't answer it, not to worry. We will be going through them afterwards and we'll answer them, and we can maybe send them on to the commissioner or his representatives, and you can get an answer that way. Remember, our audience plays a major part in our show. If there's anyone you want to have in studio, let us know, and we'll try our best to have that person in studio as soon as possible. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Jamaica Information Service to see who will be in studio next. And I'm sure you can look up the Jamaica Constabulary Force's handles at their various platforms and follow them as well. Be, kept up to date on the different initiatives and so on that they're doing, especially download the Stay Alert app. That's definitely a tool that will be beneficial in your arsenal to the members of the public. I can't encourage you more to do that. We do this every Thursday, although it's Friday today, but tune in again with us next Thursday, and you can see our next Facebook Live session. I've been your host, Vaughn Davis, and this has been Studio 58A Live. Thank you for joining us, and please have a wonderful day.